It may be easy to underestimate Rena upon first glance, but that would not be a wise choice. Born into Fort Worth, a mining city in the far north continent, her father was an engineer and her mother a chemist. Rena quickly showed her high intellect at an early age, always having an interest in tinkering with things. The only logical choice was to become an engineer, following in the footsteps of her father. She easily exceeded her classmates in skill and knowledge, graduating the Hale Rhyme Academy in Icehelm with honors and high regards. After graduating, she joined her father at the Gramport Mining Company as a mechanical engineer, working on revolutionizing the mining industry with better efficiency and equipment. She quickly worked her way up, becoming the safety manager overseeing multiple locations for the company. Rena was great at her job, and everything ran smoothly. However, she felt empty, missing a greater piece of herself. The final straw being that the son of Gramport's owner stole a forgotten sketchbook of hers and took credit for many of her ideas. In a fit of rage, she marched back home and burned the remainder of her books before setting off into the world to make something of herself, on a whim. She set off yearning for the feeling of something more than mediocre life. She had traveled south vastly underprepared, as she had never left Sunevia before. After months of travel, she finally made it to Vandalia, between Tariff and Rocknell, stumbling right into the middle of a land dispute between two towns. She was captured and kept as a prisoner of war, mistakenly, slaving away for people she had no intention of meeting. While there, she had made friends with an old human by the name of Medicus. Through their time in the camps, he had secretly taught her the basics of the arcane, giving her the ability to cast cantrips and low-level magics. Not wanting to return home, she had continued adventuring for a few more years ahead until he felt it was time to settle down due to his old age. Rena continued taking on her own personal quest, searching the land and taking small quests and odd tinkering jobs for meager gold wages. That is until she gets hired to escort a dragonborn noble to his hometown in Brimfield, where she met her fellow party members that became the Promised Outsiders.
Dundee begins his story not as this name, but as Vanicus. Vanicus raised himself and his 5 younger siblings in a small village in Sunevia due to their parents' absence from adventuring. Once he reached adulthood at age 15, he decided to venture out into the world on his own to see what the land could offer him. After some time of traveling, he saved a group from being attacked by wolves, and they all decided to group up together. Some months later, while spelunking in a cave, the group was overwhelmed by a horde of undead. Luckily, they were saved by a powerful paladin that served Justicar, who single-handedly wiped out the entire horde. In all of his power, Vanicus decided to dedicate his life to Justicar, moving forward in his life. The group stuck together for a few more years before splitting off to live their own lives. One day, Vanicus receives a letter from his village that they had been attacked by wyverns and the entire village was decimated aside from a few survivors. He rushed back as quick as he could to find the scene of hundreds of bodies burned to a crisp, including that of most of his siblings. This took a toll on Vanicus, splitting his personality in two. Hiding his pain and guilt away, he moves forward as an emerald green dragonborn named Dundee Krako, an upbeat and outgoing persona who loves fishing. In this time as Dundee, he had accomplished a plethora of life goals, namely starting his own delivery company in his new home city, Karakin, with his only surviving brother, and starting a family of his own with his wife, Amako. Together, they have 3 children of gold and black colorations. One day, while out fishing with some of his company members, the ship gets attacked by a kraken, leaving him stranded in the middle of the Darnan Gulf on a small escape ship. After many long days, he was rescued by a passing ship heading northwest. Here on this ship is where he had met the Promised Outsiders and had decided to join them on their quest to save the world from the astral dogma.
Long ago, a war raged on in the Fey realm. One such archfey, Amantiancien, was locked in a conflict against the powerful green hag, Carmilla the Cruel. During the gruesome siege against the Summer Court, Amantiancien had seen this opportunity to get the upper hand against her. Casting a plane shift, he grabbed both Carmilla and her green dragon, Nernith, and transported all 3 of them to the material plane. An epic battle between the 3 raged on for days, until finally, Amantiancien had defeated Carmilla and Nernith. Acting quickly, he devised a plan to keep her soul trapped for as long as possible. He seated a group of 14 dryads to watch over her grave and make sure she never returns. They used the magic essence of the decomposing dragon body, to expedite the process, creating a deep tomb of root and stone, locking her perfectly preserved corpse until the end of time. Many years had passed before the community had grown old and wished to set root for the final time, though not before one final member was introduced, a young sapling by the name of Wairo. They had planted her off by the mountain to grow before she joined them in their final slumber. As the years passed, the eldest member of the community, Usho, had woken to check on the members, only to wake to a concerning sight. 10 of the Dryads had succumbed to the necrotic magic radiating from Carmilla's tomb, turning the landscape into a marshy wasteland. Thinking of what he could do, he decided to wake Wairo from her slumber and raise her in his final days, while the remaining members prayed to the Forest Mother to help strengthen the tomb and hold Carmilla longer. Old and weary, Usho raised Wairo to the best of his ability, telling stories of the community when it was in its prime, as well as teaching her to grow a sapling from her own essence to carry on the group's names. As years went by, Usho noticed that the grove was growing weaker by the day as the rot from Carmilla consumed more and more. Then one night, a fire broke out in the middle of the grove, seemingly started by a group of mercenaries hired by farmers to take the land and use it to grow crops in the Fey-infused land around the grove. They gave her 2 options, leave or burn. Hastily, Wairo said her heartfelt goodbyes to Usho and grabbed her sapling, sprinting into the darkness, not knowing what fate would lie ahead of her.
One autumn night, Vesemir was delivered into the mortal plane, an icy pale child born into the poor farming town of Fenrir. His parents left him upon the doorstep of the town orphanage. The one to find him was one of the orphanage mothers, known as Liana. She took him in hastily and showed the others, but they all had given the same thought. The boy looked sickly. He couldn't possibly last the season. Liana thought otherwise, naming herself the supervising mother of Vesemir. Months pass as Liana makes her way to the orphanage with groceries in hand when she spots 2 ravens resting upon the orphanage sign. Taking action, she drops what she is holding and rushes into Vesemir's room, fearing that he had passed in the night. Barging into the room, she finds the windows wide open, with the blistering winter air blowing in. Instead of the sight she had feared to see, she finds him breathing with the raven feather resting upon his chest. She wraps him in her robed arms, praying to the pale matron and thanks that he is still alive. 12 years pass at this point. All of the other mothers of the orphanage despise Vesemir and believe that he is a cursed child and should be left to die. In those years, it was revealed that he knew how to speak Celestial before Common, and because of that, Liana was sentenced to 12 years in the dungeon. She was allowed no contact with Vesemir under the suspicion that she was a witch that had cursed him. He was mistreated and abused over this time, trying to treat his curse through pain. Over time, it became obvious that the orphanage was running low on coin, and thus the decision to sell Vesemir to the guard captain for the night was made. Liana was released from the dungeon the same day and immediately went looking for Vesemir. Upon arrival at the orphanage, she snuck around to his window to see the guard captain standing over him with fangs bared about to bite into his neck. Luckily, with some quick thinking, she broke into the room and smashed a chair over his head, knocking him out. As they were attempting to make an escape, 2 guards had shown up in the doorway, to which they grabbed Liana and cut her down right in front of Vesemir. And without hesitation and speed that he did not know he had, he grabbed the dagger from their waist and cut them down in one fell swoop in response. Vesemir gathered Liana's body and took her to the nearby graveyard to give her a proper burial. He ran through the forest for many days before coming upon a temple in the dense woods. He gives a few knocks before his body gives out and he collapses. He has thus dedicated his life to serving the Pale Matron in his mission to eradicate the undead from this realm. When on a mission with the promised outsiders cleansing a vampire coven, he succumbed by the hands of a vampire spawn which sucked the life right out of him. The party retrieved his body after completing the mission and burned his body at the stake as his faith would have it. After some time passed, his body suddenly reconstituted from pure ash back into a humanoid form. It seems that the Pale Matron was not done with him quite yet.